I'm back. Okay, now that I've gotten that out of my system, hello, my name is Foxes, or Lord Foxes if you prefer the title, and let me give you a bit of context on this video before we start. I was sitting at my desk working on my quote-unquote indie 2D Metroidvania game. The name is still pending, so I won't bore you with the details, but I was rigging my character for animation and I came to the realization that I have no idea how to animate and overlooked the complexity of rigging a 2D character that was drawn in Photoshop with my mouse. Yes, I drew everything with a mouse. Scandalous. I know. So I decided that the only way I could proceed was to learn how to animate, or at least learn the basic fundamentals of character creation and digital art. Very ambitious looking back on that decision now. Anyway, now here I am 30 days later and thought, why not share my progress with you, my unquestionably loyal viewers, in hopes of maybe inspiring at least one of you to continue pursuing that art career that you've always dreamed of. Side note, no, I have not attended art school, and I actually studied programming and worked professionally as a programmer for a few years. However, I was very into art in high school, mainly being graphic design and some unsavory aspects of arts that took place in the streets. No comment. So, it's been a hot minute since I've done anything artistic that isn't related to my job. I will also be listing all the videos I used in the description and will be referring to them in the video. So please, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. To start off, I needed to figure out where my current skill level is, using the basic brushes provided by Photoshop. And as you can see, it's not that great or notable. Once I was done with my first attempt, I understood exactly what I needed to learn, or a vague idea of where to start. That being guides on how to construct a basic head, because the simple guide I learned all those years ago just wasn't getting me very far. After searching YouTube for a few minutes, I came across a tutorial by Marc Brunet on how to draw a head in any angle, and decided to give it a shot. I mean, why not? I ended up liking it so much for the fact that it was so simple yet detailed that I ended up implementing it into my workflow every time I needed to construct a head. Once I felt comfortable with basic head construction, the next step was filling in the rest of the parts that make up a face, starting with the eyes. Once again, I needed to see my current skill level and just how much I remember about its construction, which was okay-ish, but not at a level I was happy with. After another deep dive into YouTube tutorials, I came across a tutorial by some normal artist which I liked. And that's his name on YouTube, by the way. I'm not trying to be condescending. I was a bit hesitant though, because the tutorial included color, and I've never painted before, so color is not my strong suit. But I decided to go try it out and see how far I got. While following along with the tutorial, I decided that rather than straight up copying every step, I would try to personalize it a bit so that it would mirror something more along the lines of my style. Even though I didn't really have a style at this point, but in the end I was happy with the result and decided to move on. Next on the list was lips. I didn't bother to try to see where my current skill level is because I know how much I suck at drawing lips, and went straight to YouTube to find tutorials. In this case, I used two tutorials by Cynic's Design and Angel Ganev. But just a fair warning, Angel has a unique way of teaching, so take what he says with a grain of salt. While following along with those tutorials, I decided to fill in the rest of the parts of the head, which were the nose, ears, and hair. I didn't bother searching up tutorials for those aspects of the face because I felt comfortable enough with my current skill level to fill them in using my imagination. My thought process while doing this was, what would that look like? Which sounds vague saying it out loud, but it seemed to work decent enough. I would like to note that Marc Brunet does have really good tutorials on those parts of the head, and I strongly recommend checking them out if you are struggling with any one of those three aspects. Before we continue, I would like to note that from this point on, it gets a bit intense. The art pieces I'm about to show you were done over multiple days, not in one sitting, following multiple different tutorials on how to do each step of the process. Once again, I would like to mention that all the videos used will be linked in the description below, so refer to those if you want to know anything specific. After my last practice session, I decided I wanted to do something a bit more fun and challenging. And since I enjoyed drawing mobs with my mouse while working on my game, I decided to redesign or redraw the centipede, which is meant to be one of the mini bosses within the first level of the game. I didn't exactly know all the atomical structures of a centipede, so I made a reference sheet with real life centipedes and created a sketch from there. The fun part about drawing insects is that they are basically just solid shapes slapped together like puzzle pieces, so I didn't have much difficulty creating the sketch. Doing this also taught me about perspective, since I was drawing the centipede at an angle, or a dynamic pose if you can really call it that. Once I was done with the sketch, I added a grayscale layer, ambient occlusion, shading, lighting, highlights, line work, color using a color palette, and texture using a texture brush, which I downloaded for free. Link in the description. To be honest, I wasn't too happy with the final result, as it doesn't turn out exactly as I envisioned it, but I didn't let that get me down, since I still felt as if I was making progress regarding my overall skill level. Once I finished the centipede, I played around with a few more practice sketches, just to rehash the basics I learned a few days prior, but I wasn't feeling too confident in what I was creating. Then, once again, while swimming through some YouTube tutorials, I came across a video by Greco, which was a portrait painting. I really liked some of the techniques he used and decided to try some of them out for myself. I even went as far as buying his brush set, which I now use regularly. For this piece, I decided to use my Final Fantasy XIV character as reference, and really focus on my hair using Greco's techniques, since I haven't painted hair before. I also managed to come up with my own approach for painting pupils, which I'm really happy with. I used a muted color palette, which I ended up regretting, but it's nothing you can't fix with some color correction in After Effects. Once I finished the portrait, I wanted to see if I could recreate the pupil I painted, maybe even improve on it. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul, and I wanted them to tell a story. But as you can see, midway through I got a bit bored and started drawing some bug sketches again. Next, I wanted to focus on the transition from sketch to grayscale and values. I also added in some line weights, which are so subtle, yet super effective. If I could paint in grayscale, I wouldn't have to worry as much about color. This also allowed me to practice my shading and lighting without having to worry about what it would look like with color. So, less distractions and more value correction. It was reaching the end of the month, and it was finally time to put all the skills I learned into a final piece, my magnum opus, so to say. I wanted it to be an art piece of my YouTube persona. The only problem was, I didn't have one yet. So off to the drawing boards I went. I threw together a few sketches that were quick and not so great, until I finally threw something together that I was happy with, which is the character you've seen throughout this video. With persona in hand, I got to work laying out a base sketch using some references. At some point in my tutorial binging frenzy, I picked up a tip that mentioned making your sketch a lighter color other than black, like red in my case, would make it easier to lay down the line work when the time came. Regarding the line work, while deciding on what approach I wanted to take, I came across a speed paint video by Natrix, who I've been subscribed to for a while, and I loved her line work in the way she used pure black in her shading, which is generally frowned upon by most digital artists. So I decided to try and incorporate her line art style into my own workflow. As I'm sure you've noticed, I decided to make the line work for the hair pure white, to make it pop, as the character had an off-white hair color to begin with. Next, I added the flat colors using a color palette, and the pupil I worked on previously, along with a blood spatter to give the piece a bit of a story since he was licking his lips already. Moving forward, I wasn't sure how to shade white hair, so after another search on YouTube I found a tutorial by Dinosaur, which worked really well in my case. The rest of the process was pretty much the same as the centipede I worked on earlier, adding shading, lighting, and highlights. Then, the final result. The background used in the final image was created by an AI called Midjourney, which, admittedly, is a terrifying tool for an artist since everything it creates is 100% original based on the prompts given by the user. But talking about the AI itself would be a whole video on its own, so I won't get into it in this video. That being said, I do plan on learning background and environment design in the future and plan on making a video about it eventually, so look forward to it. And with that, we have reached the end of the video. I do hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed going through this art XP grind. I plan on making a video about anatomy next, so if you enjoyed the content, do hit the subscribe button and notification bell to get notified when the video comes out. Furthermore, if you would like to support me, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description below, along with my socials. I would like to make this my full-time job, so any support from you would be appreciated. I do have a Discord server, however it's only open to Patreon supporters for now, until I can find more moderators to make it public. So if you're interested in talking to me in voice chat, or just hanging out, do be sure to check that out. Making this video took a lot of effort, and I pulled an all-nighter to edit the video just so I could get it out to you sooner. So I'm really excited to see what you guys think of it. I'll also be answering any questions you have in the comments below, if you do have any. That being said, have a cursed day, and dream sweet nightmares.